Hey everybody, welcome to this tutorial, and this is a tutorial on audio keyframing in After Effects. And we're going to be looking at how you can basically automate animation through the use of audio keyframes. If you look beneath this video, you'll find that there's a couple of zip files that you can download from the links. One contains some audio and the other contains a small piece of video that we're also going to be using later on in this tutorial. But for now, just make sure you've got the audio. So if you click on the link, download the audio, unzip it, and you should find, if you go to File, Import File, wherever you saved it, mine's just off screen at the moment, you should find a clip called Mr. Oizo. I do hope that's pronounced that way, but it's a really cool track back from ages, from if any of you guys remember Flat Eric. So this is the audio track we're going to be using. We're going to start off by creating a composition that's the right size that we want to work with. So whatever size you feel would best suit your project, that's fine. I'm going to go for a new composition, and mine's set up to HDTV 1080 25 frames per second. I've got a duration of 30 seconds, which we're going to be cutting down inside the timeline. Show you how to do that. Frame rate is 25. We're done. OK. And there's the composition. I'm also working with inside the standard view workspace in CS 5.5. If you're not doing that, make sure you're on standard. If you want to sort of like use it along with me, if you know where everything is, that's totally fine. Right, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to grab our audio clip and we're just going to drag it down into the timeline here, and you'll see that the audio clip is roughly just over 15 seconds long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the work bar area, I'm just going to bring it down to the end of that clip and go up to composition and trim comp to work area, and that'll make it the right size for the clip. So now I'm working at just over 15 seconds with my audio clip. Now by using this little arrow down here, you can see that I can drop down into the audio clip and look at the audio and the audio levels. If you wanted to adjust the audio levels, you could do. We're going to look at the waveform here, and there we can see the waveform and everything that's going on in it, After Effects. Now, it's actually quite ironic really that After Effects can use this audio effect so well, because After Effects really isn't that good for previewing audio as you make your projects normally. But we're going to add some keyframes to this, and to do that, what we're going to do is go to Animation, Keyframe Assistant, and Convert Audio to Keyframes, and you get this new layer here called Audio Amplitude. And if I just open it up there, you'll see there's a load of stuff happening here, and they're all keyframes. If I open up Effects, you'll see that I've got keyframes for the left channel, the right channel, and boths. So what I could do is apply one animation to a left channel, one animation to a right channel. If I wanted to, I'm only going to use both channels at the same time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come along and delete the left channel and delete the right channel. Right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to apply this effect to some text. So I'm just going to get the text tool, and I'm using quite a large font impact, so you can see it happening quite easily. And I've got mine at 187. It might be different for your composition, and I'm going to call mine Mr. Oizo. Okay, there we go. So there's my text, and what we're going to do now is if I go to my text and just come down to the transform tool, the transform section, the drop down menu underneath my text, you'll see that I've got the option to scale, rotate, position, all that sort of good stuff. What we're going to do is we're going to scale our text to the beat. Now to do that, we're going to use something called expressions. If you've ever used expressions in After Effects before, you'll know they're a really powerful tool for automating some effects without using keyframes, and generally use mathematics and a little bit of programming you can do to do this. In this one, what we're going to do is, rather than individually adjust the scale to make it sort of like bounce up and down like this, we're going to link the scale to this section here of both channels. So where the slider's going up and down here on the keyframe. You can see the slider there. We're just going to pick whip it using a little tool that connects it to that. So to bring up expressions, what you do is you hold down Alt and click on the keyframe symbol, which is the little stopwatch symbol at the beginning of scale there. And you'll see now what happens is you actually get this option here to write some stuff directly into the timeline that affects the expression here of the scale. What we're going to do is we're going to use this little tool here called the pick whip, and I'm going to left click on that pick whip tool and drag it down to the actual word where it says slider and let go, and you'll see that this now has changed to temp. And what I'm going to do is just click anywhere to finish that off, and now press spacebar, and you'll see that I've already got some animation happening there. I'm actually at a third resolution here. I'm just going to take mine up to full resolution so it's a bit sharper so you can see it. So it's actually happening as we go along there. I'm also going to actually just move my audio amplitude layer above that layer there so we can see it at the top happening. You don't have to do that at all. However, that effect, while good, is actually, you'll notice it's at 15.13 there, and it rounds it up to 15.1 down here, but that means at the scale it's only 15.1%, and we need to make sure that this is coming up to 100%, or at least to a size that you want, maybe past 100% scale. And to do that, what we're going to have to do is just change some of the settings of the actual slider and the actual amplitude here. So what I do is I click on the slider layer here, and it highlights all the keyframes, and then what I'm going to do is go up to the graph editor and click on graph editor, and here we can see the units and how they're being affected by the audio amplitude, and you'll see that its lowest point is 0, so we can't really see the text, and its highest point is probably around about here, which is what are we looking at there, 24.96. that's 25% of its full size. What we need to do is perhaps bring this up a bit, all of it. So I'm going to left click and drag over all of these keyframes there and highlight them all and drag them all up, and if I move them around there, they'll start at a different point. I'm going to hold shift so it locks them in place and just move them all up, and let's move them up so it almost takes it to 100%, if not 100%. So just over 100 units there, so we know it's 100%. And if I bring this back to the beginning now, and I can click off the graph editor, and I'm back in here. If I want to preview that now, I can press spacebar and you can see it moving. If I want to hear the audio, what I can do is anywhere in this area outside of the main stage, this grey area, I can just right click, go to preview and RAM preview, and it will render the section and then play it back with audio. So let's have a listen. Okay, so that's all working fine. You'll notice it's animating slightly off the side here. That's to do with the actual anchor point down in the left hand corner. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change that anchor point by coming down to the text layer, underneath transform, there's the anchor point, and I'm just going to kind of move it roughly to the middle. That'll do. To there, put it back in the middle, roughly, preview, RAM preview, and that looks a little bit more tidy. Okay, so that's starting to look good. If I wanted to make it a bit more extreme on how far back it goes, I could just come up into the graph editor again once I've selected the slider, and I'll just grab sort of like just under 50% of what goes beneath the line there and just bring these down a bit, say down to here, so it takes it back to about 65%. Preview, RAM preview again. Okay, so there we are. We're already animating. We've already done some animation to our text, but only using these keyframes and this automated process of using the expressions and linking it to the actual keyframes. You see this effect done in lots of adverts, you know, sort of drum and bass adverts, stuff where they've got the speakers sort of like rumbling and stuff. You know, often it's not quite as severe as that. It might be a little bit of a smaller sort of effect on it. Houses that go up and down, because this effect can actually be applied to different types of effects as well. So let's have a look at another effect that this could be applied to. I'm actually going to show you first of all an error that would occur with this effect as well, and just a way of thinking about what you're doing. What I'm going to do is I'll apply it to, let's see, if I select it here, we're going to apply it to effect I really like, and an effect that's actually on my logo thing at the beginning, light burst. So if I click on light burst, and I've got my text layer selected, the layer I'm going to apply the light burst to, you'll see that the light burst is actually being affected here to the text, but because of the size of the text, it's actually cropping the actual effect. If I go to, let me just bring it down here underneath effects now, you notice effects has been added to the text here. It's also up here in my effects control. I'll actually adjust it in my effects control for the moment. If I make the ray length longer, do you see the way it sort of cuts the edge of that text out? Because, well, actually, rather than that, it actually doesn't make the ray go its full length. It's limited by the boundary of the actual object. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to delete that text from the main timeline, and I'm going to create another composition which is the same size as that composition I'm working in, so 1920 by 1080 HDTV 1080 25 frames per second. If I select that, and now I'm going to just right in the middle of it again, so I'll get the text tool and I'm going to type in what am I typing in? Let's type in burst. Okay, so this will be inside composition 2 now. If I go back to my project window down the side here, I've got comp 2, comp 1. Let's go back to comp 1 here and drag composition 2 actually onto the stage of composition 1. And you'll notice now when I select composition 2, its boundary box is much wider. This means that when I come down to effects, generate CC light burst, I come down here and I can increase the ray length and it'll burst totally out like that. So ray length is what I'm going to affect, because if I have the ray length at 0, there's no effect. If I have it at 100, there's this effect. Okay, and this effect is actually quite RAM intensive, so when you're rendering it you might have to drop your rendering resolution down from full to maybe a third or something like that if you want to just see it quickly. Yeah, if you've got enough RAM, if you want to see it quickly, you might need to do that. What I'm going to do then is I'm actually going to drag comp 2 underneath my audio amplitude. I'm keep that on top at the moment, and I'm going to extend down the menu by clicking on the little arrow and extend down the effects. There's CC light burst. I'll extend that out, and I'm going to create the expressions options by just holding down Alt and clicking on ray length there. Okay, this now gives me the pick whip tool again. Drag it up to the word slider from the audio amplitude layer. I'll let go and let's see what happens. So let's RAM preview it. And you can see how slow this RAM preview is going now because I've got it on full resolution. Let's take that down to a third and look at the difference now. So preview, RAM preview, you'll see that it's jagged edges there. It's not particularly good image, but it allows you to see it better. So RAM preview, I could also press 0 on the numpad for the RAM preview, and look at the speed difference in the way it's rendering it, which is totally fine for when you're looking at how your effects work. Okay, so that's not bad. I could adjust the center of the CC light burst. Let's just bring that up a bit so it's right in the middle there. Another thing which we could do is it actually never goes back to 0, this, and that's because if we look at the audio amplitude layer for the slider, let's take off this a sec. I'm on the graph editor mode. Here we are. So I've got my keyframes back again. The slider's main position here, it does go up to 100%, but it never really goes down to 0, so this effect is always on it. There's several ways I could do this now. I could add a little bit of an equation on the end here to bring down the slider so it's not quite so intense. But what we're going to do is make sure that we're clicked on the slider. So select the slider, come up to the graph editor and choose that. And what I'm going to do is, let me just think, I'll just sort of like highlight all of this, and I'm going to drag it down. Oh, I've missed one keyframe there, so watch out for that. I'm going to highlight all of it, drag it down, so I'm holding shift down, maybe take it to about 50-60% max, and click off it. And then with these bottom set of keyframes, I'm going to highlight those, click on the arrow, drag these down individually, and take them, so the majority of those are sort of like above and just below the 0 there. Let's preview and round preview that and see what happens. So that's looking pretty cool. You know, that's a good effect done really quickly, saving loads of animation time. Now I'm going to show you something I just had a play with before I did this tutorial, just to see how well it would work. And I think for a quick experiment it seemed to come out really well. I had to try a few different things. So this is the clip you can download beneath this video, and it's called Red Ink 2, and it's in a zip file, so you need to unzip it before we can use it in the clip. And I've basically deleted everything from the project file that you've done before, so we're pretty much starting from scratch. But I'll show you the clip first, and then we'll try and do it together from scratch. This is what we're doing. And it did take some experimenting with some of the effects and also some equations which we're going to go into, and it's a bit trial and error, so you know, stick with me, play around with what you want as we go through it as well. Okay, so you need to download the file and unzip Red Ink 2 from underneath the video, and then import it. So I'm going to go File, Import File, and import that clip. So mine's just off screen here, Red Ink 2, and bring it in. And the first thing we're going to do is create a new composition from this. So I'm going to drag it down to the new composition button down here and create one that matches it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to now bring the audio down, and like we did in the previous example, I'm going to go to Animation, Keyframe Assistant, Convert to Keyframes, and up comes the audio amplitude, and you can see the clip there. I'm going to shrink down the clip using the work area and go to Composition, Trim Comp to Work Area, and now it should be the right length. Right, the next step is to go to Effects and Presets, and I used several different effects to try and get what I wanted to. This one was the best one I found. If you type in time and get to time warp, what you need to do is drag that onto the video clip. And if I extend out the options here, you can see I've got time warp under effects, and I'm just going to save this up quickly. And I have all these different options down here to adjust, and we have speed and source frame. Now what we're going to do is we're going to link the speed to the audio amplitude, and the why it's going to go backwards and forwards is at some point we're going to make the audio amplitude go to a minus value, and at some point it's going to go to a positive value. That'll make the speed go to a minus value and play backwards, and the speed go to a positive value and play forwards. So if I open up the audio amplitude first, we're going to work on this. I'm going to delete the left and right channel by pressing delete on each of those, and then I'm going to hold down Alt and click speed on red ink. That brings up the expressions, which I'm then going to grab the pick whip tool and drag. Oh, I need to open the bottom there. I need to drag to the slider section, which I've just opened underneath both channels. And now we have this. If I preview it. And you can see we hardly have anything. There's some movement over here, and the reason this is going so slow, yeah, you can just about start seeing it happen. Let me just render a little bit more so you can see it a bit more effectively. It's just playing in slow motion basically. Down here you can see the speed's 16.96%, and that's because that's what the audio's at. So it's hardly doing anything. We want it really to be moving quite fast to give the idea of this movement to the music. So what I'm going to do is click on the slider layer here, and we need to make these more, if you know what I mean. We need to make it have a wider range. So if I click on the slider and I go to the graph editor up here and click on that, what we're going to do is increase these units, and we're going to grab these top set of units here. If I click and drag, but I'm going to leave some middle ones, so these middle ones we're going to leave roughly. And I'm going to click and drag these up, say to about 40 there. Then I'm going to drag a selection of these lower ones here. So let's click and drag, try and get them. Yeah, say about that many. And I'm going to click and drag these down to minus 40. And then this section here I'm kind of happy with. Really, I might just bring it down a tiny touch so it's kind of above and below the 0 mark. Right, let's have a preview of that and how that works. And you can see still really there's very little going on. It's going up and down between the speeds, but it's hardly affecting the clip at all, and that's because when it goes back to 0, if it's going to a minus value, it can't go beyond 0. It's like rewinding a videotape beyond the beginning. So it's kind of stuck at the beginning here. To solve that problem, what I did was I came up to the slider here. I turned off the graph mode, and I just cut a second's worth of the audio clips out of the beginning of it. And I created a new keyframe by adding this add keyframe button here, and increase this value to 50 to start with. It might change later on, okay? And then I go to preview, RAM preview, and now it plays in at 50% speed. I'm just going to change the resolution down to a quarter so it renders it quicker. And now you can see it's starting to play forwards and backwards a bit more effectively. Okay, but we need it to be even more aggressive than that. So what I did then was come down to expression speed, and this is basically an equation giving us that number. And what I did is, because that number's at 7 there, I thought, well, I'm gonna times that by 10. So I just use the times symbol, which is the little star, and 10. And then let's have a render of this now. I might take it down, preview, there we go. So now it bursts into the scene, and you can see the effect is a lot more aggressive. So now let's have a look at it. it looks a lot better. You know, if I want to make it more extreme, the effect, what I can do is still come over to the slider, come along here, change some of the graph, and maybe make these a bit lower again so it comes down further and stuff, and rewinds it a little bit more maybe on those ones where it goes right down, and a few more of these come down as well. So that's the effect there. One other thing I'm going to add, just to sort of like show you one other little trick you could do, is onto this layer as well, why don't we add some color correction. And if we scroll down, let's add color balance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come off this graph mode a sec and drag color balance down onto this layer here. And with the color balance, let's drag the effect, which should be down here. There we go. Let's get the hue rotation wheel and press the keyframe. So we're activating it, and let's whip that now up to the slider, and I'll preview that for you and see what happens. Okay, perhaps it's a bit too much, but anyway, you know, that's how to have some fun with audio keyframes, and from the animation panel, and linking it to other effects. There's so many effects you can link it to and use to sort of like create music video effects and intro effects that are really, really good and don't require you to do so much work. So I hope that's been a help, and if you make any sort of videos with this, I'd love to see them, and just post them below. Thank you very much.